Hi, welcome back. We are about to kick off another session at Kadence Amplify. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Katie Boykin. I'm the marketing manager here at Kadence, and I am so excited about all of the amazing sessions that we have had so far. Just as a reminder, we are running 2 tracks at the exact same time. So we are recording every session, and we will have them posted next week for you to watch and rewatch. But let me go ahead and introduce you to our next presenter. This is Nathan Ingram. Nathan is the host at Solid Academy, where he live streams a few times a week on WordPress and business development topics. He is also the creator of Monster Contracts, proven contracts for WordPress client work, and co-creator of Monster Secure, security essentials training for clients. Nathan has been building websites for clients since 1995 and is a growth coach for micro agency owners. Please help me welcome Nathan Ingram. Hello. I don't think I can hear you. Are you? Maybe it's me. Hold on one second. Let me take out my headphones. Can you guys tell us in the comments if you guys can hear Nathan? Let's see. Someone says we're lagging on video. Hi, Nathan. Can you hear me? I can't hear you for some reason. Let me see. There we go.
You can hear me now, okay?
I can hear you. Wonderful.
The default had the correct mic, but when I switched it to specifically the mic, it decided to work. So who knows?
All the good tech issues. That's okay. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Wonderful. Good. I'm excited to learn all about your systems, how systems equal success. So without further ado, I'll let you take it away.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Katie. So I'm really excited about this presentation because this is a subject that can legitimately transform your business once you get your hands around it. As Katie mentioned in her nice introduction, I've been a growth coach for micro agency owners for almost 10 years now. And this is one of the areas that I work with the folks that I coach because it's been so impactful to me in my growth from a solopreneur to now a small agency. So I want to talk about this whole issue of systems over the next few minutes here and hopefully give you some tips and tools that will be helpful. So let's just start off with a little bit of a dream, right? Like, wouldn't it be nice if you had no problem clients whatsoever? Wouldn't it be wonderful if you didn't have to worry about delays in content and collecting content from clients? Wouldn't it be great if it took less time to do everything that you do and you were more accurate when you did it? These things aren't a pipe dream and they're not just fantasy. The answer to all of these questions is actually what we're talking about today, which is systems. Now, I've had over 1,000 coaching conversations in the last 10 years as I've been working with solopreneurs and micro agency owners. And what I've come to realize is that virtually every business frustration that we have can be solved by systems. So you might say, when it comes to business and systems, this is the way. So here's what we're going to be looking at over the next few minutes together. And that is, first of all, what is a system? Let's put some words around it so we know what we're talking about. Then we're going to take a look into the value of systems to your business. Then we're going to look at an overview of a system. It'll actually be my website creation process, the system that we use in my agency to build websites as an example. And then how do you create a system? What does that process look like? I'm going to give you a tool to help along with that. And finally, how do I refine my systems to make them better and better? So that's where we're headed, and we'll hopefully have some good time for Q&A when we wrap up. So first of all, let's start off with this question of what is a system? And the definition I like to use is that a system is a collection of processes that you use to run your business. So at the core, a system is a collection of lots of different processes that you're going to use every client, every project, every time without fail. So a system being a collection of processes, what then is a process? Well, a process is a combination of 3 things: tasks, tools, and templates. So a system is a bunch of processes, and every process is comprised of some combination of tasks, tools, and templates. And these are the things that we do to do our work. So your system might have multiple processes in it, and we'll show some examples of that. But this is sort of how it breaks down. So business has systems, systems has processes, and every process is some combination of tasks, tools, and templates. And you're going to use these processes to work with every client on every project every single time. Now, a key part of what really makes an effective system is that the system is repeatable by someone other than you. Now, this is where a lot of folks, especially if you are a solopreneur or a freelancer or whatever label you choose to define yourself, if you're working alone and you're primarily the one that's executing these things, we don't tend to think about this very often. And actually, something begins to happen that I call the hero syndrome. So a lot of times in our businesses, we tend to focus on heroics. And what I mean by that is we just sort of know everything that we're supposed to do in our heads. And whenever a problem needs to be solved, we put on our cape and we swoop in with the answer and the solution. And all these things are in our head, and that works okay for a little while. But as soon as you start to grow a little bit, or some other things that we'll talk about in a minute, it starts to become much less valuable to have these things just in your head. It's really this difference between intuition versus intention. The first real mental hurdle to beginning to implement systems in our businesses is to learn to focus on process and not heroics, to focus on intention rather than just intuition. I sort of know what to do next. And the reason is that intuition does not scale. You can't scale the intuition in your mind. It has to get out of your head and onto paper in a repeatable process. By the way, intuition also doesn't sell very well. There may be a day that comes when you want to grow your business or sell your business. Rarely, if ever, are businesses static for a very long period of time. So when the time comes where you want to grow or maybe sell, we have to be intentional about these things. It's a really tricky thing to move from an artisan who is doing the work to a manager who is managing others doing the work. And systems will help you along that process. So let's talk a little bit more and unpack a bit more about what the value of systems are to your business. Now, it may be that you are a solopreneur and you've just heard me talking about scaling or selling your business, and none of that connects with you very well. And so I want to bring up a few objections that I typically receive when I talk about this, either with coaching clients or in a live stream like this or an in-person event. There's a few that always seem to pop up. And the first objection is this. Hey, look, I do custom work for every client, so I can't create a system that we just repeat every time because every project is different. Now, I found a particular emoji that I like to use to answer this objection, and that's it right there. Because no matter how custom your work is, you can still create repeatable systems. And I know this to be true because this was the excuse that I used for many years as I was doing business the wrong way. As was mentioned earlier, I've been working with clients to build websites since 1995, almost 30 years. And for a lot of that time, I did it the wrong way. And I did a lot of extra work and I was not very organized. And I had to learn these things the hard way. I used to say, I do custom work, and so I can't have a repeatable system. And it's bogus. You absolutely can create repeatable systems, and those systems will make you better. Now, the second objection that also came from my brain at one time was this. Oh, look, my clients don't want to be constrained by systems and processes. If I put processes in place and rules they have to follow, they're not going to like that. And again, the answer is this fun little emoji right here, because the reality is systems and processes keep problem clients fenced in. Now, my little friendly monster just made an appearance there. If you're familiar with some of the other talks that I've given about dealing with problem clients and building fences around friendly monsters, that's my fun little monster guy there. And these problem clients can be a real concern. I mean, spend any time in a group of people who do what we do, building websites for clients, and typically you're going to hear stories of problem clients. Jump in on Facebook groups where there's web developers and everybody's got a story of a problem client, right? The reality of good systems and processes is that they keep these problem clients fenced in so they don't run amok all over your world. And the reality also is not only do systems and processes help you deal with problem clients and keep them contained, they also give good clients confidence, because good clients love the fact that you're not just shooting from the hip when it comes to running your business. Good clients actually become more confident and are able to trust you more because you know what you're doing and you've got those things documented in excellent processes. Now, there's a third objection that I typically hear, and that's, look, I'm just a solopreneur. I'm just a one-person show. I'm not trying to grow my business. I'm not trying to sell my business. And by the way, nothing wrong with that. I think our businesses ought to support whatever the goals we have for our life are, and you can do that as a solo or as a team or whatever. There's nothing wrong with this, but saying that I don't need systems because I'm not trying to grow or sell, again, gets the fun little emoji here, because my response is, look, you're not trying to grow or sell yet. Right now, that may not be your plan, but I've talked to so many people over the last 10 years of doing coaching conversations where at one point in this chapter of their life, they were fine with just being a solo, but the day came where they wanted to sell their business or they needed to bring some people in. Our businesses rarely stay static. You may not be trying to grow or sell now, but that day may come. And there's two things that bring value to an agency when it comes time to sell, and that's recurring revenue and repeatable systems. Those two things make an agency sellable. Plus, there may come a day when you're not able to work. What if something happens to you and you can't do what you normally do? How easy would it be for somebody to step in and sort of pick up the ball where you left it and continue to work with your clients because you have your repeatable systems in place? But either way, systems and processes make you more efficient now. And this is the beautiful part, that kind of the hidden value of systems is that even if you're a solopreneur, even if you don't want to grow or sell now, today, systems and processes can make you more efficient. So let's talk a little bit about what a system might look like in practice. I want to give you an overview of my website development system. This is how we build projects in my agency. We have done it this way for many years now, and we do it for every client, every project, every time. Now, I want to visualize this as like a game board. If there's board game fans out there, this is like a little game board, and we're going to drop in right here our friendly monster, our client, into our world, right? And we're going to start out in the first little bit of this little board game that our little guy is going to walk around here in our discovery phase. So when a client first appears into our world, we're going to do have some basic conversations to figure out, where'd they come from? Are they serious? We're going to give them a starting price to let them know, our minimum cost of engagement, so we're not wasting our time. They're going to fill out a discovery form that will ultimately lead to scheduling a discovery meeting. Now, what you're going to see as we progress through this little pathway here is that there's a back and forth of commitment between us and the client. We'll give a little bit to the client. We're going to expect a little bit in return. They're going to give a little bit, and we're going to return with some more that we give. So it's a back and forth cooperative effort to move through this process of building a website. So for us to do anything, they're going to understand our starting price. They're going to spend some time and invest some time to complete our discovery form, and then we'll commit back to them an hour for a discovery meeting. And during that time, it is a limited time. It's constrained. We're not going to give 4 or 5 hours of our time away for free like I used to. We have a checklist that we use for every discovery conversation that asks the questions just to uncover what the scope of the project is going to be. And we have 2 goals for this discovery call. Number 1, should we even write a proposal for this client? Is this a client that we want to work with? And number 2, to get everything in that call from the client that we need in order to write a proposal if we're going to proceed. So that's what we do. There's a checklist. Again, we're talking about systems and processes, tasks, tools, and templates. There's a set of tasks we do for every discovery phase. There are templates of checklists of questions. So all this works together in that piece of the process. Now, once we get through discovery, we're going to move into our documents and deposit phase. It's at this point where we give them a proposal, which is a scope of work, the price to build the site, and the price to manage the site, as well as our payment terms and methods. They get all that stuff in that document. We also then have them sign the contract or a master services agreement, which we provide through Monster Contracts if you want our agency template. You agree in that contract to our processes. This is how we do it. The specifics of the way we build websites, the specifics of the way we manage websites. So you have to sign those two documents and, of course, give a deposit that's typically 50% of the project cost. It is non-refundable under any circumstances. And as soon as we get those documents and the deposit back from the client, well, we move on to the next phase, which is content. So we have a content-first approach to website development. This is a hard-learned lesson over the years. This is going to start with content definition, where we actually decide what it is that needs to be created as far as content. From that, we're going to figure out what the architecture of that content looks like, and then we create a content guide that's going to help the client provide to us the assets that we need, whether we're informing a content writer that we bring in or whether the client is providing their own content, all the media, all the stuff, everything that goes on the website. We're going to give them a checklist of things in that content guide to provide to us. And then we get content approval, which means everything that they have as far as content from the site is delivered to us at this point and approved. This is the approved content to build the website. It's a form to fill out, and we don't go any further until we get all of that content from the client. When we do, we move into our design phase, where we're going to design typically a rendering of the homepage, maybe one of the handcrafted pages of the site that's like a special landing page or a special services page. Maybe a look at one of the standard pages of the site, what a blog post looks like, any other special pages. We're going to render that out either in the browser or graphically, depending on the project. It's at this point where we're going to ask the client to sign off on colors and typography, the design language of the site, and we're going to ask for design approval. Now, notice we're moving forward through this little board game, and we're getting approvals at each step. And if we have to go backwards, that's when it starts to cost money. And all of that is specified in the contract. So we're moving slowly, step by step through this process. Each of these phases has their own set of tasks, templates, and tools that are the same for every client, every project, every time. Now, once the design is approved, we're going to move on into the development phase, where we start with our base site that uses the Kadence theme and our own plugin stack that we like to use for every project. We spin that up with a spin up checklist from a sample site into, we just replicate that into the build site for the client. We're going to render out the design, enter the content, create the functionality, and then we hand it over to the client for review and revisions. Now, when the client says, hey, this is great, we like it, or we've got some changes, whatever, when it's right to the point where they're ready to launch, we move them into launch approval. There is a form they fill out to signify that, yes, development is complete. We're ready to launch the site. We receive that final payment, and then boom, we're going to launch the website according to our launch checklist. Again, tasks, tools, templates, always the same for every client, every project, every time. Now, once the site is launched, we drop them into our management process. So they live down there where another project process takes over. This is our hubs system, our hosting, updates, backup, security to keep a website healthy. As we all know, website management process here. And they're right there in that bucket with a bunch of other clients, and hopefully they're all happy. And then when the next client comes along, boom, they just drop right back into the same system because we use it, again, for every client, every project, every time. Now, that is an example of one system that's used in my business. It's a collection of tasks, tools, and templates in one process and lots of other processes all together to make that web development system work. So we've got our web development system. We also have a web management system. Maybe we don't do SEO, but maybe you do have an SEO system. There's all sorts of different systems that you might have in your business, because your business is a family of systems, each comprised of processes, which are comprised of tasks, templates, and tools. So hopefully that starts to make a little sense about how all of this stuff works together. So that's the concept of systems and how they work out potentially in a business. Let's talk a little bit about creating systems now. How do you begin to create systems for your business? Well, my suggestion is that you start, first of all, with a couple of lists, 2 lists. First of all, a list of everything you're doing now. Like, you have systems, whether you realize it or not. They may not be consistent, but you typically, if you've been doing web design for any length of time, you've got a way that you like to do things. So let's make a list of all those things. What are all the things that I'm doing? Second, what are the processes that are part of every system? Just make a list. And here's the thing. Start with paper, not software. Or if paper's a little too much for you, then just, start with a list in a very simple text editor, because I promise you, software is not the answer when you're starting to define systems and create systems. You will be constrained by the limitations of particular software to think correctly about your systems. Always plan your processes first. So let's talk about how that might work. And just in general, how do we flesh out all the processes in a system? Well, remember, processes are comprised of tasks, tools, and templates. Okay. So let's talk about tasks. When we start to list the processes of each system and start to unpack what tasks are needed, again, we're just listing them out. They don't have to be complete yet. We're just creating a list. But let's talk about tasks. We need to have, if there's tasks in a system, for example, there's a list of all the questions that we want to ask in a discovery call to unpack the client's expectations and requirements for a website. That needs to be a checklist, because I don't want to have to rely on my memory to make it happen. So if it depends on memory, if anything you do depends on your memory, if you're operating currently in heroics by intuition instead of by process, get that stuff out of your head and into a list. Write that checklist like somebody else is going to follow it. If you work in an agency, it may well be that somebody else, actually some other person, is going to execute this. If you're a solopreneur, still write it like somebody else will follow it. Use video when you can. There's great tools out there that will allow you to record your processes quickly and just leave a link in a Google Doc or whatever to a short video that explains how to do something. Remember, this is all about process, not heroics. Don't rely on your own intuition to remember this stuff every time. There's a great book that I recommend that talks about this, and perhaps you've heard of it. It's called The Checklist Manifesto, and it explains the value of creating checklists. There's actually a book, Checklist Manifesto is great, but the book that I recommend is called A Summary of the Checklist Manifesto. You can get it on Amazon, and it's basically the high points of that book, and you can read it in just, like less than an hour instead of all the stories and examples in the book itself. The stories and examples are great, but if you want to just get to the nitty gritty, then get the summary of the Checklist Manifesto. And it'll explain to you this incredible value of offloading all this stuff, all these lists and things, getting them onto a piece of paper or a Word doc or whatever, just getting them out of my head and into someplace else, because that will free up your mental RAM and give you more operating system power in your own brain. It's an amazing thing, and it actually works. So we're going to start with our tasks, and we're going to list out all those things, all the tasks that we need that are part of this process in this system. Now, the next part of our processes are our templates. So we're going to make templates for everything that repeats. If you're going to do it again, make a template for it so that you never start from scratch again. Now, for example, have you ever in your work with clients written the perfect email that describes in the exact words that you love about, some piece of this process? Save that email, because it's likely that can just be a template that you repeat every time. Never start from scratch again. And the way to start thinking about this is the next time I do a thing, I'm going to make a template for it. So don't try to create all your templates at once. You'll get lost and overwhelmed. But the next time that I'm going to do something that I know is going to repeat again in the future, well, I'm going to save that. The next time I do it, I'm going to save it. And that might be scripts for phone calls and emails. It might be really great templates for your proposal. Like if you've got a proposal that's for a brochure type website, great. Maybe you've got an e-commerce website proposal you just did. And wow, this is going to be something I could probably use again for future e-commerce projects. Well, make a template for it. Have a contract template. Have guides for clients you create to help them think through their content or think through design options or technical things that they need to think through. These guides and things that you'll use over and over, anything that's going to repeat, make a template from it, and you're going to be better for it. It's going to save you so much time as you go forward. Now, last of all, there is the issue of tools. Now, we need to have standard tools for every process. Now, one of the biggest recommendations I give to people, especially just starting out, a lot of times I'll get asked in an event or in questions in a live stream or whatever, I'm just starting out. What's your advice? And there's two things I always tell people really at any level of business, but especially those just starting out. And it's number one, build recurring revenue as quickly as possible. That's a whole other topic. But number two is standardize your tool set as quickly as you can. Get standard tools, pick a tool set and stick with it, and then optimize your tool set for your workflow. Now, that for us starts with a theme and plugin stack that we use for every project that we build. It starts with a Kadence theme and a set of plugins that we love, and we build every site from that. Now, what that does is it lets us do our work more quickly because we're using tools that we're familiar with. But the hidden value of this is that later, after you've launched this site and it's in your management bucket with all the other sites you're managing, it's much easier to manage sites that share the same tool set because you get familiar with some of the quirks sometimes that happen with your favorite plugins or whatever, and you're not having to manage a different tool set for all the sites that you're managing. It makes it so much easier and more consistent. So resist the temptation of the new and shiny. And I'm looking at you, AppSumo. We need to be real careful about this. Don't just change your tool set because something new and shiny has come along. So pick your tool set, stick with it. Starts with WordPress, theme and plugins. It can be the apps or gateways you use for payments, your support tickets, what you use for document signing. Integrate as much of that stuff as possible and stick with it unless there's a compelling business reason to make a change. So keep our tools consistent. So again, a list of all my systems, a list of the processes in each one, and then list out those tasks, templates, and tools that go into each of those processes. Now, if that sounds a little overwhelming, it can be, which is why I'm going to give you a tool. Now, at the very end of this presentation, I'm going to give you a QR code that's everything in this slide deck and this tool I'm about to give you, which is a separate page, a printable that you can do with what you want. This tool is called the Advanced Coaching Process Generator. Advanced Coaching is my coaching service. And there's nothing magic about this. It's just a brainstorming canvas, but it's got spaces where you can write the answers to the appropriate questions to ask when you're building out a process. So it starts here with the process name. What am I going to call this? This is website launch checklist, for example. What does the client need to do in this process? What are they responsible for? What am I responsible for in this process? What are the tasks that need to be part of this process? Now, again, this is not the individual items of a checklist. It's, I need a checklist for this. I need a checklist for that, and so forth. What templates are involved? What tools are involved? And very importantly, this process concludes when what happens? The client signs off on a form, or the website is actually launched, or we receive payment for this, or whatever. Now, down below here, there's actually the process sequence where we're actually listing the steps of the process. Now, again, there's nothing magic about this. It's just a bunch of boxes that help you think through in a logical way how to, visualize a process in your business. So I would encourage you to grab the slide deck, print this out, and just use it as a template as you're thinking through the different processes there in your business. Now, once a system is created, it always needs to be refined. The very nature of systems and the very nature of the work that we do is that things change all the time. My goodness. Just for example, just this week, had to go back through and refine our process for setting up Cloudflare because, again, they changed the user interface and things are in different places. So it always is. Your systems and processes are always going to need refining, and your system will never be perfect. So my advice to you is just start. Just start getting things written down. Start getting things out of your head and into some sort of documentation, because done is better than perfect. It's never going to be perfect. Just get it done and then refine as you go. Now, there's a warning I want to give you here, and that's that those of us that self-identify as geeks tend to get frustrated with this piece of advice, that done is better than perfect, because we want everything to be perfect. We want the perfect system. And many times we'll delay putting a system into place because we want it to be perfect. And that's a mental hurdle we have to get over, because anything worth doing is worth doing badly at first, and we'll refine it. We'll just get better. Let's get it out there, get it started, get it, the basics documented, and then we'll add to, refine, record the videos later, next time we do it, whatever. Just get started. Done is better than perfect. Another piece of boots on the ground type advice is to refine it as you run it. So whenever you run your website development process, for example, once you're finished, do a systems check after every project. Let's take a minute and think about it. If you have a team, it's a great team exercise. If you're a solo, just after you launch a website, for example, just sit down and think through, okay, I had some problems in my system at this point. And don't necessarily change everything if you encounter a problem, but ask yourself the question, was that friction that I experienced the exception, or is this normal? Like, is this really a piece that I need to refine and deal with it that way? So just refine it as you run it. Get it down, get it started, just start. And then as you use it every time, massage that checklist, move number 7 up to number 3 or whatever. Refine it as you run it. The last bit of advice I'll give you is this. Systems take a lot of work. They do. They take a lot of work, but they're absolutely worth it. So the question I'll leave you with today is this. If you focused on systems for 6 months, for the next 6 months, or maybe you start in January with the new year, and one of your big goals of the new year is that over the course of the first 6 months, I'm going to really focus on my systems. I'm going to start getting things down. I'm going to start refining them. I'm going to start getting consistency in my tasks, tools, and templates. How much different could your business be if you focused on this for 6 months? How would this consistency impact your free time, the amount of time it takes you to do projects or to manage websites? If you got consistent with tasks, tools, and templates, how could that shrink the amount of time you would have to invest in running your business? And as a result of that, the big question is, how much different would your life be if business didn't take as much time as it does now because you've got good systems in place? How much different would your life be? Would you have more free time for hobbies or vacation? Would you have less stress because that, if something were to happen to you, that there's a good system in place? If you have a team, how much better would the team flow be if everybody was playing from the same set of notes? So that's my challenge to you. Systems equals success. My name is Nathan Ingram. I'm the host at Solid Academy, creator of Monster Contracts and Monster Secure, and you can find me on Twitter at Nathan Ingram. Thanks so much.
That is amazing. Truly an incredible presentation. I also need to know, maybe next Amplify, you're going to have to teach us how to make these amazing slide decks, because this was so cool. This QR code, remind everybody about what they're going to get when they scan this QR code.
So that QR code will download a PDF file that contains all the slides. And the last page of the PDF is the printable advanced process generator that will help you think through the process of creating systems.
Awesome. Well, let's dive into a few questions. And by the way, if you haven't asked your question yet, pop that into the YouTube chat right now, and we'll be sure to address that. I know you said don't get caught up in software, but for someone who is a solopreneur and is thinking long term, they want to eventually work towards a team, but they are doing everything themselves. Maybe they don't have a lot of money in the budget. What's the most affordable system that someone could get started with, in your opinion?
Oh boy. Software for managing
Any
processes?
of the systems, yeah, for
Okay.
processes and keeping track of your tasks and starting your documentation process. And
Yes.
where should someone kind of keep all that organized?
So I'll answer this two ways. First of all, whenever we talk about software, the perfect software doesn't exist for everything. Like there is no perfect project management software. You sort of have to go with the one that you hate the least. And that's also true when it comes to, where I'm storing my documentation. For years, we used Google Docs and it just works. It's generally going to be free. Unless if you have a Google Workspace account, it's included, or just use a Gmail account for that matter. And Google Docs are really, really great with having the table of contents view on the side where you can skip to different pieces and sections of your process, linking back and forth to each other. We've since moved, we're actually in the process of moving away from Google Docs into a tool called Process Street, which we really like as an agency.
That's awesome. And then what about for more advanced users? I know you just said Process Street, but what if someone is getting to a point where they're like, okay, Google Docs has worked for a while, but now I need to like assign tasks to people. Does Process Street do that type of work too, or?
No, Process Street is, it allows you to run the processes piece by piece. But if you're dealing with a team and you're assigning tasks to assets, people, contractors, employees, whatever, you really need a project management software. And I'm seeing my videos lagging. I'm not sure what's going on there, so I apologize for that.
You seem okay to me.
Okay, good. So you need some sort of project management software. And I got to tell you, there is the number of project management softwares that I find awful it's a very large number. We tried, we finally settled on one that we like called Nifty. It is not perfect, but it works for us. You kind of have to settle on the project management tool that you hate the least.
That's actually really great advice. I feel like I'm in a unique position because I also work here at Kadence and I also have my own business where I run a boutique agency too. So everything that you were talking about, I'm like, yep, because I went from a solo designer and then now I'm trying to manage a team, and that's a totally a different process. And I was actually listening to a podcast. This would have been a few years ago, but James Clear had done a podcast with Brene Brown, and he was just talking about, your success will rise to the level of your systems, which is exactly what your talk is about. And so from that moment, I was like, yeah, I need to get my life together because it's all in my brain. And as the business owner, where you're trying to outsource, it's like you're usually the bottleneck when you're trying to get past that part. Any tips about, for that new beginner, like someone who's moving from that solopreneur to the agency model where they're outsourcing and hiring contractors or maybe even full-time employees?
Yeah.
I know that's broad.
Well, no, that's a real challenge. And the wonderful thing about these sorts of questions is that there are like the details of the question are different from person to person, but the challenge is the same. These are challenges that we all share. So, what you're getting at is this: how do I make the transition from the artisan to the manager? And it's just really hard. And some people can't do it. And that's not good or bad. That's just reality. And maybe maybe you don't want to be a manager. I've had, conversations with coaching clients over the years where after a long discussion, we just finally decided, it's probably better if you stay solo and just say yes to the right projects for you. And you don't want the stress and anxiety of outsourcing. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a personal choice. And you can be successful either way. Like it's a myth that says you have to grow your agency to multiple team members and whatever. That may not fit for you, and that's okay. But if you're at the point where you've decided, yes, I want to grow and yes, I want to outsource, and you've been the expert for all these years, you're the artisan who does things their way, releasing control of that is the biggest challenge. because I want things exactly like I want it. And, the people, the contractors you hire are not going to be you. Employees you hire will not have your same level of competence generally. Otherwise, they'd be running a business, right? So at some point, you have to realize when I outsource or when I hand off or whatever, that 80% is going to be good enough if I get back from them. 80% of what I could do is good enough, and then I can either tweak it or just kind of maybe it's okay at 80%, and the client's happy. And when I try to push it from 80 to 100, I'm spending a lot of extra time doing little details that nobody really cares about anyway. So it's a mental hurdle to get around at that point.
Yeah, that's actually a really helpful tip. And, speaking of control, like what tips do you have for people to give up that control? Because I know that's a really hard thing, especially for business owners. Any business owner is like, either they go into it knowing that they want to have an exit strategy. And so they go in starting with, I'm outsourcing and doing as little as possible, or they come in as that artisan. They want to stick it to the man type mentality, I find. So any tips around that?
Yeah. It's, if you're on the road to grow and that's what you want to do and you're bringing people in, there's some degree of like, you have to decide what's important that you must control, right? Like there are certain standards that we're going to meet. But kind of like I alluded to earlier, I would spend just hours, I'm trying to think of a specific example, but just hours on like design things and I got to get that corner. Maybe, okay, if I just round that corner this much and then back and forth, and I would spend hours doing little small modifications to a design that nobody's ever really going to appreciate other than me. And those are some of the things I just had to let go, because ultimately the client's satisfied and the product, the website, for example, meets the business objective without me having spent 5-8 extra hours on some crazy, just perfection design thing that I was trying to accomplish.
So sometimes we can be guilty of our own scope creep.
Oh, 100%. That's so good. We can create our own scope creep by the pressure to over deliver to the client.
Man, I feel like you're speaking right to me. This whole presentation.
We all struggle with the same thing.
Yes, it really is like just giving up control, but also wanting to maintain a level of quality for your client, is that like juxtaposition and that balance that you have to maintain. We did have a few comments on YouTube. Everybody's just saying, awesome, great job. Thanks. Great presentation as always. And then Greg said, I would love to see a sample of one of his systems, and just for the layout, not for what his system actually is. Do you have something like that handy? If not, that's okay. That might be putting you on the spot.
Not that I could share at this point. That's something that I do get into, very practical things in coaching conversations, but yeah, I don't have something I can just show on the screen at this moment.
That's okay. And then how would someone work with you in the coaching capacity?
Yeah, just reach out to me. There at nathaningram.com, there's a contact form. There's some information about coaching there.
Awesome. Great. Well, this was an amazing presentation. I don't think oh, wait, one more question just came in. Sorry. This is from, I think it's Amadeo. I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce his name. It says, would you think by now there's sample starter templates of these systems, emails, contracts, checklists, tools, etc., for download as a starting point?
Sure. There are a number of places that give templates. I just Google, website design process template, and there's going to be 100 of them out there. I was about to say I never find those useful. That's not true. I think they're helpful at least to get your mind around some things that maybe should happen in what order, but they're always going to have to be customized for your work and the way you like to do things, and what makes sense for your clients and your process. So yeah, there are tons of libraries of processes out there. I can't call a specific website at the moment, but a quick Google search will turn up plenty. But just again, they're helpful to jump off, but you're going to have to spend time refining those to match your process.
Yeah, that's really good. I like what you said at the beginning or inside of your presentation about doing a systems audit and just writing down what you currently do. because that's probably the jumping off point. Maybe you download some sort of like checklist that's kind of generic as like a free PDF to see maybe what your process is missing. But I would audit. I like what you advised at the beginning of saying, start with where you are and then add to it instead of
trying to get things out of my head. And most people that I've worked with, they know what to do. They know how to launch a website, for example, but they don't have it written out into different points. And what you find is when you start to do that, when you start to create a checklist like that, you end up saving yourself time, because if I move point number 7 up to point number 3, that actually makes the rest of this flow quicker. And over time, getting them out of my head first, and then refining those processes each time I run them, ultimately will save you time in the future.
What would you say to the person who is drowning in client projects and they are so busy servicing all of the customers that they've already promised to deliver, projects for, and they don't have time to work on their business to do systems? What advice would you give to that person?
Oh, welcome to the club. Like, that's normal. So there is always there's always friction between strategy and execution in a business. Like, we know we need to take time to do strategic work to improve our business, but we're always having to execute and do client work. And this is not just true in our industry. This is a corporate thing that people at the corporate level and large businesses talk about: strategy versus execution. And what I would recommend, if anybody's interested in that, just Google "Taming the Whirlwind" and my name, Nathan Ingram, and there's recordings of a talk I give that addresses this exact point. The most recent one that's out there is probably WordCamp US 2022. Just Google "Taming the Whirlwind" on WordPress.tv, and I've given that at multiple WordCamps. And there's another tool there also to help, but it's basically, how do I grow my business when I'm busy doing client work? Like, how do I find time to do all of this work, like create systems, when I come in the morning and I got an email with a client for 15 things to do before noon? How do I do that? And that talk will give a very practical approach to actually making that happen.
That's amazing. I wrote that down. I'm going to go check that out, because that's, I think, a valuable resource. And I think a lot of people struggle with that same thing. I think
Absolutely.
Those are all of the questions that we had. Thank you so much. Anything else you want to share? I'm going to bring up your slide one more time. Anything, last tips, or how someone can reach you or work with you?
Yeah, folks are welcome to join me on Solid Academy. We do 3 live streams a week, typically Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Most are free. Some are for members, and that's with Solid WP, which is, of course, a stellar product just like Kadence. You can just go to solidwp.com and follow the Academy links and learn more about that. I'm live streaming all the time. Otherwise, check out Monster Contracts and monstersecure.com, or me at nathaningram.com.
That's wonderful. Thank you again so much for your presentation.